There's some things I see out in the world, it could be in a natural world or even a man-made world, that I find interesting. Let me give an example of that. Well, one example from some time ago is I was drive around, you see construction sites, sometimes you see cloth hung around the building. And the way the cloth was waving on the building, I said, yeah, that's kind of interesting. I want to play around with that. So what I did is I went to the hardware store and I got very thin drop cloth, 1 mil. And I taped 2 pieces together, so I had a rectangular sheet that was about 20 feet long by 18 feet wide. And I put it on 4 flexible fiberglass rods over here. And I just let the wind blow it. And it's really interesting to watch. Sometimes if there's a gentle breeze, it sort of just goes up and down. Sometimes it waves a little bit, and when it's really windy, it jumps all over the place. And with that one, I hardly made any changes. I found, though, that the 1 mil drop cloth tears easily, and this summer I got parachute cloth, which is lightweight, flexible. That's because that's what I needed, and it doesn't tear. It's really strong, and that's feeling pretty good. But sometimes I'll see something and I said, that's an interesting effect, and I'll go home and start playing around with it, and I get an idea for a sculpture, and I said, then I try to do it and it doesn't work. But in the process of playing around with it, I find there's some other thing going on that I find interesting, and I play with that and something happens. Some of my best sculptures are ones where I didn't start out to do it, but I discovered it along the way. And that was true with the mist at the Exploratorium. I was playing around with that and I didn't know quite how to control it, and I tried different things, and if it stays near the surface, I get more control. So you got to play around with stuff. Well, I like to tell the story. I used to tell workshops to teachers that I came across a long time ago. Edmund Carpenter, who was an anthropologist, wrote about some of his work with the Eskimos, and he said one time he was watching an Eskimo carver, and a carver would start carving away with his piece of ivory or bone, and he'd be humming away, and then somehow a seal emerged from the bone. And the idea was that he didn't start out with a seal. The seal came from his interaction between the bone and his own past experience and all that. And there's one tradition in sculpture, Michelangelo, Brancusi, and even some contemporary artists talk about their work in the same way. They play around with stuff. And as they play around with stuff, they get ideas, things happen. But I realized that that has embedded in a very interesting philosophy, not only in terms of materials, but with people and whatever you're working with. You don't start necessarily with preconceptions. You don't start with stereotypes about people. You try to have a dialogue with them and get to know them through the dialogue. When you work with students, you don't try to impose concepts and all sorts of stereotypes on them. You set up situations where you can get to know them through the way they work with the materials and the way they talk about that and the way they talk with you. So in that one example is a whole philosophy of education. In fact, I've written one chapter in my book about that. That it's a humanistic approach to education. Right?